December 30th, 2006. A cold morning in Baghdad. The man with the noose around his neck once commanded the fourth largest army in the world. He was the most feared leader in the Middle East. But that morning, he was just an old prisoner awaiting his execution. So, how did the process that took Saddam Hussein from palaces to the gallows begin? Was it all power intoxication, or was it part of a global trap? Subha Tulfa. While carrying the child in her womb, she endured the two greatest tragedies of her life. First, she lost her husband, then her son. This grief plunged her into such deep darkness that she rejected the very life growing inside her. But fate could not be denied. On April 28, 1937, that child was born, and his mother gave him the name Saddam, meaning the one who confronts. Saddam was born into a home of sorrow. But to save him from this misery, his mother sent him to Tikrit to live with his uncle. His uncle Kairala was not just an officer, he was a radical nationalist. He constantly planted the history of Iraq and stories of heroism into Saddam's mind. He always told him the same thing: you will be one of them. But when his uncle was imprisoned, the nightmare began. Saddam was forced to return to his mother's house. But now there was a new man in the home, his stepfather. This man was not just cruel, he was a criminal who pulled Saddam out of school and forced him to steal. Saddam spent his childhood enduring beatings and humiliation. This physical and psychological abuse left wounds on his soul that would never heal. When Saddam turned 10, his uncle, fresh out of prison, gave him a gift that would change his life: a real gun. Introduced to violence at such a young age, Saddam was now out of control. He became so reckless that he even threatened his teachers with the weapon at his waist. By the time Saddam turned 19, his goal was clear: to become an officer like his uncle. But when he failed the military academy exams, that door was slammed shut in his face. But Saddam didn't stop. Even if he couldn't wear a uniform, he found another front to fight on: the streets and politics. He joined the Ba'ath Party, the heart of Arab nationalism. He was young, angry, and reckless. Qualities that allowed him to rise rapidly within the party ranks. The target was massive: Iraq's military dictator, General Abd al-Karim Qasim. The party made its decision. The dictator had to die. And among the assassins chosen to pull the trigger was Saddam. An ambush was set on the streets of Baghdad. The general's car was sprayed with bullets. The scene turned into a bloodbath. But incredibly, the general survived. For Saddam and his team, this was a disaster. Now 22, Saddam was Iraq's most wanted man. Capture meant execution. But like a ghost, he vanished. He changed his disguise and managed to escape to Egypt. His new home in exile was Cairo. And there, he began studying law. In 1963, Iraq shook. The Ba'ath Party overthrew General Qasim in a bloody coup. Saddam returned from exile as if he had won a victory. But Iraqi politics was slippery ground. Less than a year later, a counter-coup brought down the Ba'ath rule. Saddam was on the losing side again. He was arrested and thrown into prison. However, Saddam refused to rot in that cell. 2 years later, he outsmarted his guards and managed to escape. He was free and he had only one goal: absolute power. He quietly expanded his influence within the party. And in 1968, the Ba'ath Party seized control again with a new coup. Officially, the new president was his cousin, Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr. Saddam was just a deputy on paper. But in the palace corridors and on the streets, everyone knew the truth. Al-Bakr was the face in the window, but the shadow ruling the state was Saddam Hussein. Saddam was the iron fist of the new regime. While al-Bakr played the role of a fatherly leader, Saddam managed all the regime's dirty work, torture, and executions. His goal was clear: to inject pure fear into society. Shortly after coming to power in Baghdad's famous Tahrir Square, he had 13 alleged Israeli spies publicly hanged. The bodies dangled for days, and these executions turned into a celebration. But Saddam knew that power could not be built on fear alone. To guarantee obedience, he had to buy the people's loyalty as well. In 1972, he nationalized Iraq's oil. This move poured billions of dollars into the country's treasury. With this money, he brought electricity to villages, built hospitals, and raised literacy rates to the highest levels. By 1979, al-Bakr was old and sick, or at least that was the official story. On July 16th, he announced his resignation, and the rule of the country was officially in Saddam's hands. Just 6 days after taking power, Saddam gathered all senior party members in a conference hall. The cameras were rolling. Lighting his cigar with his usual calmness, Saddam addressed the hundreds in the hall from the podium. "There are those trying to conspire against me, and they are currently among the audience." He began reading names from the list in his hand, one by one. Those named were dragged out by guards to be executed on the spot. Saddam Hussein was building his empire of fear. For Saddam, current power was not enough. He had set his sights on Iran's oil resources and regional leadership. Seizing the opportunity created by the power vacuum after the Iranian Islamic Revolution, he declared war on Iran in 1980. Saddam expected a swift and decisive victory. However, his underestimation of the Iranian state and its resistance capacity caused his plans to fail. When Iran managed to halt the Iraqi army, the war reached a stalemate. During this process, Saddam aimed to achieve nuclear weapon capability. As this posed a regional threat, Israel took action. Through an airstrike, Iraq's nuclear facilities were bombed, and Saddam's nuclear program was destroyed. Losing power both on the field and strategically, Saddam offered a ceasefire to Iran. However, the Iranian leader, Ruhollah Khomeini, rejected this offer in no uncertain terms and announced that the war would continue. The bloody Iran-Iraq War, which lasted 8 years, ended in 1988. While the war had no clear winner, both sides suffered massive losses. Nevertheless, Saddam Hussein declared victory despite the utter destruction. Immediately after the war, he carried out chemical attacks on regions with dense Kurdish populations, particularly Halabja, claiming they had collaborated with Iran. In these attacks, conducted with mustard and sarin gas, nearly 5,000 civilians perished in a gruesome manner. The Iraqi people were being crushed under Saddam's rule. Freedom of speech, prosperity, and peace were no more than distant dreams for them. Saddam Hussein was becoming increasingly aggressive. Punishments and tortures had surpassed the limits of endurance. Moreover, the Iraqi economy lay in ruins due to the burden of the war. To restore the economy, Saddam set his sights on his oil-rich neighbor, Kuwait. However, Kuwait was a state that maintained strong ties with the West. Disregarding this, Saddam amassed thousands of troops at the border. In 1990, the small state of Kuwait was occupied by the Iraqi army in just 6 hours. This event sent shockwaves throughout the world. The United Nations, led by the United States, strongly condemned Saddam Hussein and issued an ultimatum to Iraq. Yet Saddam refused to back down and continued to defy the world. During a United Nations meeting, Saddam was given a strict deadline to withdraw from Kuwait. It was decided that if Saddam did not retreat within this period, military force would be applied. However, Saddam did not withdraw. On the contrary, he continued to defend the occupation by claiming, "Kuwait is a province of Iraq. We do not want war." When the deadline expired, coalition forces began bombing Baghdad. Saddam was in the grip of a technological assault, unlike anything he had ever seen. Following the air campaign, a ground offensive was launched, and Kuwait was liberated in a short time. For Saddam, the era of paranoia had begun. He took extraordinary measures to avoid capture, spending every night in a different location and using dozens of body doubles. Opponents of Saddam within the country had grown significantly stronger. However, the number of those fanatically loyal to him was also undeniable. This support allowed him to survive for a while longer. On April 9, 2003, Baghdad fell completely. Saddam's forces had lost their will to resist, and his giant statues in the squares were being toppled one by one. The U.S. announced a reward of $25 million for Saddam and $15 million each for his sons, Uday and Qusay. Soon after, following a tip-off from an Iraqi, Uday and Qusay were killed in an operation at the house where they were hiding. While the search for Saddam continued, one of his bodyguards was captured. The bodyguard confessed the location of Saddam's hideout to American soldiers. Saddam Hussein was found hiding in a dark hole of just a few square meters underground. He had only his weapon and $750,000 with him. In court, he tried to maintain his authority and blamed the United States. However, after a 3-year trial, he was sentenced to death for crimes against humanity. On the morning of December 30th, 2006, at 6 a.m., he was executed by hanging